Chapter XXIII. Of the admirable things that the extreme Don Quixote told that he had seen in the deep cave of Montesinos, whose impossibility and greatness make this adventure apocryphal. At the work of 12 or 14 stages of the depth of this dungeon, on the right-hand side, a concavity and space is made capable of fitting a large cart with its mules. Enter a small light through some cracks or holes, which respond far away, open on the surface of the earth. This concavity and space I saw in time when I was already tired and sullen from seeing myself, hanging from the rope, walking through that dark region below, without following a certain or determined path, and so, I determined to enter it and rest a little. Suddenly and without trying, a very deep sleep jumped out at me, and, when I least expected it, without knowing how or how not, I woke up from it and found myself in the middle of the most beautiful, pleasant, and delightful meadow that nature can create or even imagine the most discreet human imagination. I woke up my eyes, wiped them, and saw that I was not asleep, but really awake. Then a royal and sumptuous palace or alcazar appeared before me, whose walls seemed to be made of transparent and clear glass, from which opening two great doors, I saw that through them came out and towards me a venerable old man came. He came to me, and the first thing he did was hug me tightly, and then tell me, "Long times have passed, brave knight Don Quixote de la Mancha, that those of us who are in these enchanted solitudes hope to see you, so that you can give news to the world of what enclose and cover the deep cave through which you have entered, called the cave of Montesinos, a feat only saved to be attacked by your invincible heart and your stupendous spirit. Come with me, clear-sighted gentlemen, I want to show you the wonders that this transparent alcazar overlaps, of whom I am the warden and perpetual guardian, because I am Montesinos himself, from whom the cave takes its name." I asked him if it was true what was said in the world up here, that he had taken from the middle of the chest, with a small dagger, the heart of his great friend Durandarte and brought it to Señora Belerma, as he had ordered, to the point of his death. He replied that they were telling the truth in everything, except in the dagger, because it was not a dagger, not even a small one, but a carved dagger. The venerable Montesinos put me in the crystalline palace. There was a marble tomb, with great skill made, on which I saw a knight stretched out lengthwise. I had my right hand placed on the side of his heart. He told me, "This is my friend Durandarte, flower and mirror of the enamored and brave knights of his time, he has him here enchanted, as he has me and many others, Merlin, that charming Frenchman who they say was the son of the devil, nobody knows how or why we loved it, and this will tell as time goes by, which are not very far away, as I imagine. What amazes me is that I know, as certain as it is now by day, that Durandarte ended his life in my arms, and that after he died I took out his heart with my own hands, and in truth he must have weighed 2 pounds, because, according to the natives, he who has a larger heart is endowed with greater courage than one who has a smaller one. Well, since this is so, and this gentleman really died, how is it that now he complains and sighs from time to time, as if he were alive?" Having said this, the miserable Durandarte, giving a loud voice, said, "Oh, my cousin Montesinos! The last thing I begged you for, that when I was dead, and my soul ripped out, that you take my heart to where Belerma was, taking it out of my chest, now with a dagger, now with a dagger." Montesinos told him, "Now, Mr. Durandarte, my dearest cousin, I have already done what you ordered me on the fateful day of our loss, I took out your heart as best I could, without leaving even the slightest part in your chest. And with many other of your acquaintances and friends, the wise Merlin has delighted us here for many years, and, although there are more than 500, none of us has died, only Rudera and her daughters and nieces are missing, who crying, out of compassion that Merlin must have had for them, turned them into so many lagoons, that now, in the world of the living and in the province of La Mancha, they are called the Rudera lagoons. The 7 are from the kings of Spain, and the 2 nieces from the knights of a most holy order, which they call San Juan. Guadiana, your squire, also lamenting your misfortune, was turned into a river called by his same name, which, when he reached the surface of the earth and saw the sun from the other heaven, he felt so much sorrow to see that he was leaving you, that he submerged himself in the bowels of the earth, but, since it is not possible to stop going to its natural current, from time to time it comes out and shows itself where the sun and the people see it. Know that you have here in your presence, and open your eyes and you will see him, that great knight of whom the wise Merlin has prophesied so many things, that Don Quixote de la Mancha, by whose means and favor it could be that we were disenchanted." "And when that's not the case," replied the wounded Durandarte in a faint, low voice, "when that's not the case, oh cousin, I say, be patient and shuffle." And, turning on his side, he returned to his customary silence, without speaking another word. At the end of the rows came a lady, who looked like one in gravity, also dressed in black, with white headdresses so stretched out and long that they kissed the ground. Montesinos told me how all those people in the procession were servants of Durandarte and Belerma, that they were delighted there with their 2 masters, and that the last one, who had her heart on the canvas and in her hands, was Mrs. Belerma, who 4 days a week with their maidens they made that procession and sang, or, to put it better, wept dirges over the body and over the wounded heart of their cousin. I don't know, Señor Don Quixote, how your grace has been down there in such a short space of time. A little more than an hour. That can't be, replied Don Quixote, because there nightfall and dawn came for me, and it returned to dusk and dawn 3 times. Among other infinite things and wonders that Montesinos showed me, which slowly and in due time I will tell you in the discourse of our trip, not all of them being from this place, he showed me 3 farmers who were jumping and jumping like goats through those lovely fields, and, as soon as I had seen them, when I knew that one of them was the unparalleled Dulcinea del Toboso, and the other 2 those same farmers who came with her, that we spoke at the exit of Toboso? I asked Montesinos if he knew them. He replied that he did not, but that he imagined that they must be some enchanted leading ladies. When Sancho Panza heard his mistress say this, he thought he would lose his mind or die of laughter, that, as he knew the truth of Dulcinea's feigned charm. Your worship was well up here with her complete judgment, just as God had given her, speaking sentences and giving advice at every step, and not now, telling the greatest nonsense that can be imagined. As I know you, Sancho, responded Don Quixote, I pay no attention to your words. How or in what way did you meet the lady our mistress? And if she spoke to her, what did she say, and what did she reply? I knew her, replied Don Quixote, in that she is wearing the same dresses that she was wearing when you showed her to me. I spoke to her, but she did not answer me a word. Before her, she turned her back on me, and she ran away from her with such haste, that a rock rose did not reach her. He also told me that, in time, I would be told how he, Belerma and Durandarte, with all those who were there, would be disenchanted. One of the 2 companions of the unfortunate Dulcinea, and, her eyes full of tears, with a troubled and low voice, she told me, my lady Dulcinea del Toboso kisses your grace's hands, and begs your grace to do it for her. Let her know how she is, and that, as she is in great need, she also begs your grace, as earnestly as she can, to lend her 6 reals, over this new cotton skirt that I bring here, or whatever your grace may have, that he gives his word to return them very quickly. I asked Mr. Montesinos, is it possible, Mr. Montesinos, that the principal enchanted suffer from need? To which he replied, believe me, your grace, Señor Don Quixote de la Mancha, that what they call necessity is used everywhere, and it spreads everywhere, and it reaches everyone, and even the enchanted do not forgive. Pledge, I won't take it, I replied, nor will I give you what you ask for, because I only have 4 reals, which I gave him, which were the ones that you, Sancho, gave me the other day to give alms to the poor that I came across on the roads. And I told him, tell, my friend, to your lady that her work weighs heavily on my soul, and that I would like to be a fucar to remedy them, and that I let her know that I cannot and should not have health lacking her pleasant sight and her discreet conversation, and so I will do to her not to calm down, and to go through the 7 games of the world, until she is disenchanted. And, taking the 4 reals, instead of bowing to me, he did a caper, which rose 2 yards into the air. Oh my God! Sancho said at this time in a loud voice. Is it possible that there is such a thing in the world, and that enchanters and enchantments have so much force in it, that they have changed my lord's good judgment into such absurd madness? Since you are not experienced in the things of the world, all things that have some difficulty seem impossible to you, but time will pass, as I have said before, and I will tell you about some of the ones that I have seen down there, that will make you. Chapter XXIV. Where 1,000 trifles are told as impertinent as necessary to the true understanding of this great history. The cousin was frightened, both by the audacity of Sancho Panza and by the patience of his mistress, and he judged that from the happiness he had at having seen his lady Dulcinea del Toboso, although enchanted, that soft condition that she then displayed was born in him. I, Señor Don Quixote de la Mancha, consider the day that I have worked with your grace very well spent, because in it I have gained 4 things. The first, having met your grace, which I have great happiness. The second, having known what is locked up in this cave in Montesinos, with the mutations of Guadiana and the Ruderal lagoons. The third, understand the antiquity of the cards. The fourth is having known with certainty the source of the Guadiana river, until now ignored by the people. But keep this here for another more comfortable time, and we'll find a pick-up place tonight. Not far from here, replied the cousin, is a hermitage, where a hermit makes his room. While doing this, they saw that towards where they were a man was coming on foot, walking quickly, and hitting a male who was loaded with spears and halberds. 725 When he reached them, he greeted them and passed by. Don Quixote told him, good man, stop, it seems that you are going with more diligence than that male needs. I can't stop, sir, replied the man, because the weapons you see I'm carrying here will have to serve tomorrow, and so, it is forced on me not to stop, and to God. But if you want to know why I wear them, I plan to lodge tonight in the inn that is above the hermitage, and if it is that you follow the same road, there you will find me, where I will tell you wonders. This was done, they got on horseback, and all three followed the right road to the inn, which they reached a little before nightfall. But Sancho's bad luck seems that he ordered the hermit not to be in the house. With this, they left the hermitage and headed for the inn, and after a short distance they ran into a young man, who was walking ahead of them not very quickly, and so they caught up with him. When they got to him, he had just sung one, which the cousin took from memory, which they say went, "My need leads me to war, if I had money, it wouldn't be, really. Walking so lightly is caused by heat and poverty, and where I'm going is to war. With all that, have a happy fortune to have left the court with such good intentions as you have, because there is nothing else on earth more honorable or more profitable than to serve God, first, and then his king and natural lord, especially in the exercise of arms, by which one attains, if not more riches, at least, more honor than for the letters. And it is that, apart from the imagination of the adverse events that may come to him, that the worst of all is death, and as long as it is good, the best of all is to die." They asked Julius Caesar, that valiant Roman emperor, what was the best death. He replied that the unexpected, the sudden and unforeseen, given the fact that they kill you in the first faction and fight, or already from an artillery shot, or blown up from a mine, what does it matter? Everything is dying, and the work is finished. And, according to Terence, he seems more like the soldier killed in battle than alive and safe on the run, and the good soldier attains as much fame as he has for obedience to his captains and to those who command him. And for now I do not want to tell you more, but that you climb on the haunches of this horse to the inn, and there you will dine with me, and in the morning you will continue on the road. May God give you as good as your desires deserve." The page did not accept the treat of the haunches, although he did accept the dinner with him at the inn. And in this, they arrived at the sale, at nightfall time. They had not entered well when Don Quixote asked the innkeeper about the man with the spears and halberds, which answered that the mail was being accommodated in the stable. The cousin and Sancho did the same with their donkeys. Chapter XXV. Where the adventure of the Bray and the funny one of the puppeteer is pointed out, with the memorable riddles of the fortune-teller monkey. Don Quixote's bread was not baked, as they say, until he heard and knew the promised wonders of the man who carried the weapons. The man replied, "Your Mercedes will know that in a place that is 4.5 leagues from this inn it happened that one of the aldermen, through industry and deception of a girl servant of his, and this is a long story, was missing an ass. And, although the said alderman did the possible diligence to find him, it was not possible. 15 days would have passed, another alderman from the same town told him, 'Give me good luck, compadre, that your donkey has appeared in the mount.' He fled and entered the most hidden part of the mountain. 'If you want the two of us to go back to look for him, let me put this donkey in my house, and I'll come back later.' And, arriving at the place where they thought to find the donkey, they did not find him, nor did he appear in all those surroundings, although they looked for him more. I have determined that you go to one part of the mountain and I to another, so that we go around it and walk everything, and from stretch to stretch you will bray and I will bray, and it cannot be less than that the donkey hears us and answers us, if it is in the mount.' It happened that almost at the same time they brayed, and each one, deceived by the other's braying, went to look for each other, thinking that the donkey had already appeared, and, seeing himself, the loser said, 'Is it possible, compadre, that it wasn't my ass that brayed?' 'It was not, but I.' 'Now I say,' said the owner, 'that from you to an ass, friend, there is no difference, as far as braying, because in my life I have seen or heard something more proper.' 'Those praises and exaggerations,' answered the tracer, 'better concern you and touch you than me, compadre, that by the God who raised me you can give 2 brays ahead of the biggest and most expert brayer in the world, because the sound you have is high, the sustained of the voice, to the time and compass of him. I will also say now that there are rare abilities lost in the world, and that they are misused by those who do not know how to take advantage of them.' 'Ours,' replied the owner, 'if it is not in cases similar to the one we have in hand, they cannot serve us in others, and even in this one, pray to God that they be of benefit to us.' Having said this, they divided again and returned to their braying, and at each step they deluded themselves and came back together, until they took it as a password that, in order to understand that it was they, and not the donkey, they brayed twice, one after the other. With this, braying at every step, they surrounded the entire mount without the lost donkey responding, not even by signs. But, how was the poor and ill-gotten man to respond, if they found him in the most hidden part of the forest, eaten by wolves? And, seeing him, his owner said, 'I was already amazed that he didn't answer, because if he wasn't dead, he would bray if he heard us, or he wasn't an ass, but, in exchange for having heard you bray so gracefully, compadre, I consider the work I had to look for him to be well spent, even though I found him dead.' With this, disconsolate and hoarse, they returned to their village, where they told their friends, neighbors, and acquaintances what had happened to them in search of the donkey, exaggerating each other's grace in their braying, all of which was known and spread to the surrounding places. He ordered and made the people of the other towns, seeing someone from our village, bray, as if striking them in the face with the braying of our rulers. And the disgrace of this mockery has reached such a point that many times with an armed hand and a squadron, the mocked have gone out against the mockers to battle, without being able to remedy it king or roque, neither fear nor shame. I believe that tomorrow or that other day those of my people, who are the brayers, will have to go on campaign against another place that is 2 leagues from ours, which is one of those that persecute us the most, and, for leaving well prepared, I have bought these spears and halberds that you have seen. And, at this, a man entered through the door of the inn all dressed in chamois, stockings, greguscos, and doublet, and with a raised voice he said, Sir guest, is there an inn? Here comes the fortune-teller monkey and Melicendra's altar-piece of freedom. Such a body, said the innkeeper, here is Mr. Mays Pedro. Good night, we are ready. This is a famous puppeteer, who has been around this mancha de Aragon for many days. He also brings with him a monkey of the rarest ability that was seen among monkeys, nor imagined among men, because if they ask him something, he is attentive to what they ask him and then jumps on the shoulders of his master, and, reaching his ear, he tells him the answer to what they ask him, and Master Pedro declares it later. 2 reals for each question, if the monkey answers. In this, Master Pedro returned, and in a cart came the altar-piece, and the monkey, large and without a tail. Don Quixote asked him, Tell me, your grace, Señor Fortune-teller, what pexy did we catch? What is to become of us? And see here my 2 real ones. Sir, this animal does not respond or give news of the things that are to come, he knows something about the past ones, and about the present ones, somewhat. Sancho said, Here's my 2 reals, and tell me the most handsome gentleman what my wife Teresa Panza is doing now, and what she's doing. With great haste, Master Pedro went to kneel before Don Quixote, and, embracing his legs, he said, I embrace these legs, just as if I were embracing the 2 columns of Hercules, O distinguished resuscitator of the already established cavalry errant oblivion, oh no, never, as it should be praised Knight Don Quixote de la Mancha, encouragement of the fainted, support of those who are going to fall, arm of the fallen, staff and consolation of all the unfortunate. Don Quixote was stunned, Sancho was absorbed, the cousin was astonished, the page was stunned, the one who brayed was stunned, the innkeeper was confused, and, finally, all those who heard the puppeteer's reasons were frightened. And you, O good Sancho Panza, the best squire and the best knight in the world, rejoice, your good wife Teresa is hot, and this is the hour when she is raking a pound of flax, and, for more signs, he has on his left side a runaway jug that fits a good reason for wine, with which he entertains himself in his work. I think so very well, replied Sancho, because she is blessed, and, unless I am jealous of her, I would not change her for the giantess Andandana. If I had money, said the page, I would ask Mr. Monkey what will happen to me on the pilgrimage I am on. To which Master Pedro, who had already got up from Don Quixote's feet, responded, I've already said that this beast doesn't respond to what's to come, that if he responded, it would not matter if there was no money, that, for the service of Mr. Don Quixote, who is present, I would leave all the interests of the world. And now, because I owe him, and to please him, I want to put together my altar-piece and give pleasure to all who are in the sale, without any payment. Don Quixote was not very happy with the monkey's riddles, because it seemed to him that it was not on purpose for a monkey to guess, neither those to come, nor things past. Look, Sancho, I have considered this Master Pedro, his master, must have made a pact, tacit or express, with the devil. He must have made some concert with the demon so that he instills that ability in the monkey, with which he earns food, and after he is rich he will give him his soul, which is what this universal enemy wants. And it makes me believe this to see that the monkey only responds to things past or present, and the wisdom of the devil cannot be extended further, that those to come he does not know except by conjecture, and not every time, that only God is reserved to know the times and moments, and for him there is no past or future, that everything is present. With all that, I would like your worship to tell Master Pedro to ask his monkey if what happened to your worship in the Montesinos cave is true, that I have for myself, with your mercy's pardon, that everything was trickery and lies, or at least, things dreamed of. Don Quixote communicated his thoughts to him, and asked him to ask his monkey later if certain things that had happened in the cave of Montesinos had been real or dreamed. The monkey says that part of the things that your worship saw, or happened, in the said cave are false, and part plausible, and that if your grace would like to know more, that next Friday you will answer everything that is asked of you, that for now you have run out of virtue. Events will tell, Sancho, replied Don Quixote, that time, discoverer of all things, does not leave anything that does not bring them to the light of the sun, even if it is hidden in the breasts of the earth. And, for an hour, this is enough, and let's go see the altar-piece of the good Master Pedro. Don Quixote and Sancho obeyed him, and they came to where the altar-piece was already set up and uncovered, everywhere full of lighted wax candles, which made it showy and resplendent. Upon arrival, Master Pedro got inside it, who was the one who had to handle the figures of the artifice, and a boy, a servant of Master Pedro, put himself outside to serve as interpreter and declarator of the mysteries of such altar-piece. Chapter XXVI. Where the amusing adventure of the puppeteer continues, with other really good things. This true story that is represented here to your graces is taken verbatim from the French chronicles and from the Spanish ballads. It deals with the freedom that Mr. Don Gayferos gave to his wife Melisendra, who was captive in Spain, in the power of the Moors, in the city of Sansuena. Don Gayferos is playing at the tables, since Melisendra is already forgotten. And that character who appears there, with a crown on his head and a scepter in his hands, is Emperor Charlemagne, putative father of Melisendra, who, sulky at seeing the idleness and carelessness of his son-in-law, comes out to scold him, that he does not seem but that he wants to hit him with the scepter half a dozen bumps on the head. Look, your graces, too, how the emperor turns his back and leaves Don Gayferos disgusted. And, with this, he enters to arm himself, to then set out on his way. Your graces, turn your eyes to that tower that appears there, and that lady that appears on that balcony, dressed in the Moorish style, is the peerless Melisendra. Also look at a new case that is happening now, perhaps never seen before. Can't you see that Moor who silently and step by step, putting his finger to his mouth, comes up behind Melisendra? Well, look how he gives her a kiss in the middle of her lips, and her haste that she gives herself to spit, and to wipe them with the white sleeve of her shirt. Look also how that serious Moor who is in those corridors is King Marsilio de Sansuena, who, having seen the insolence of the Moor, since he was a relative and great private of his, immediately ordered him to be arrested, and given 200 lashes. This figure that here appears to be on horseback, covered with a Gascon cloak, is the same as Don Gayferos, whom his wife, already avenged by the audacity of the Moorish lover, with a better and calmer countenance. Mr. Gayferos discovers himself, and that by the cheerful gestures that Melisendra makes we are made to understand that she has met him, and more so now that we see, he hangs down from the balcony, to put himself on the haunches of her good husband's horse. But, oh, no luck, that a corner of his skirt has caught on one of the irons on the balcony, and he is hanging in the air, unable to reach the ground. But Don Gayferos arrives, and, without looking to see if he will tear his rich skirt or not, grabs her, and badly makes her go down to the ground, and then, with a jump, puts her on the haunches of his horse, astride like man, and orders her to hold on tight and throw her arms behind her back. You see how they turn their backs and leave the city, and joyful and rejoicing take the road from Paris. There were not lacking some idle eyes, that usually see everything, that did not see Melisendra's descent and ascent, of whom they reported to King Marsilio, who then commanded to touch the weapon. See how many and how lucid cavalry leaves the city in pursuit of the two loving Catholics. Seeing and hearing, then, so much merisma and so much noise, Don Quixote seemed to think it would be good to give help to those who were fleeing, and, rising to his feet, in a loud voice, he said, I will not consent in my days, and in my presence, so famous a gentleman and such a daring lover as Don Gayferos will be tricked. Stop, you ill-born scoundrel, do not follow or persecute him, if not, with me you are in battle. And, saying and doing, he unsheathed his sword, and in a leap he stood next to the altar-piece, and, with an accelerated and never-seen fury, he began to rain down knives on the merisma puppeteer, knocking down some, decapitating others. Master Pedro cried out, saying, Stop, your worship, Señor Don Quixote, and note that these whom you knock down, destroy, and kill are not true Moors, but little figurines made of paste. Finally, in less than 2 creeds, he found the entire altar-piece on the ground, all its rigging and figures smashed to pieces and crumbled. I would like to have here before me at this point all those who do not believe, nor want to believe, of how much benefit knights-errant are in the world. Look, if I were not here present, what would happen to the good Don Gayferos and the beautiful Melisendra? In short, long live the cavalry errantry over how many things live on earth today. Live in good time, said Master Pedro at this time in a sickly voice, and let me die. It hasn't been half an hour, not even half an hour, since I saw myself lord of kings and emperors, my stables and chests full and sacks of infinite horses and innumerable finery, and now I see myself desolate and despondent, poor and beggar, and, above all, without my monkey, which, by faith, first that it returns to my power, my teeth will have to sweat, and all because of the ill-considered fury of this gentleman. If Señor Don Quixote would pay me some part of the works that he has undone for me, he would be content, and his mercy would ensure his conscience. That's right, said Don Quixote, but up to now I don't know that he has anything of yours, Master Pedro. How not? Answered Master Pedro, and these relics that are on this hard and sterile ground, who scattered and annihilated them, if not the invincible force of that powerful arm? These enchanters who persecute me do nothing but put the figures as they are before my eyes, and then change them into the ones they want. That everything that has happened here seemed to me to be true to the letter, that is why my anger was altered, and, to fulfill my profession as a knight-errant, I wanted to give help and favor to those who were fleeing, and with this good purpose I did what you have seen. If it has turned out the other way around, it's not my fault, but that of the bad guys who persecute me. See Master Pedro what he wants for the broken figures, which I offer to pay him later, in good and current Castilian currency. And here the gentleman innkeeper and the great Sancho will be mediators and appraisers, between your grace and me, of what the already broken figures are worth or could be worth. 4.5 reals. Ahead. Don Quixote said. It wouldn't be much if I asked for 5 reals and a cuartelo. Measure the game and indicate 5 reals. 2 reals and 12 maravedis. In this way, he put a price on many other destroyed figures, which were later moderated by the 2 referee judges, with the satisfaction of the parties, which reached 40 reals and 3 cuartelos, and, in addition to this, which Sancho later paid for, Master Pedro asked for 2 reals for the trouble of taking the monkey. In short, the storm of the altar-piece ended and everyone dined in peace and good company, at the expense of Don Quixote, who was liberal in every extreme. Before dawn, he who carried the spears and halberds left, and after dawn. Finally, Sancho paid him very well, by order of his mistress, and, saying goodbye to him, at almost 8 o'clock they left the inn and set out on their way. Chapter XXVII. Where he finds out who Master Pedro and his monkey were, with the bad event that Don Quixote had in the braying adventure, which did not end as he wanted and as he had planned. He says, then, that he who has read the first part of this history will well remember that Ginés de Pasamonte, to whom, among other galley slaves, Don Quixote gave freedom in Sierra Morena, a benefit that was later ill-grateful and worse paid. Of those wicked and badly accustomed people. This Ginés de Pasamonte, whom Don Quixote called Janicelo de Parapilla, was the one who stole the gray from Sancho Panza, that, for not having put the how or the when in the first part, due to the fault of the printers, he has given reason to many, who attributed the lack of printing to the author's poor memory. But, ultimately, Ginés stole from him, with Sancho Panza sleeping on him, using the trace and manner that Brunlo used when, Sacripant being on Alberca, he pulled the horse from between his legs, and then Sancho charged him, as has been said. Counted. This Ginés, then, fearful of not being found by the justice system, who was looking for him to punish him for his infinite mischief and crimes, which were so many and such that he himself composed a large volume counting them, determined to go to the kingdom of Aragon and cover his left eye, accommodating to the office of puppeteer, that this and the playing of hands he knew how to do to the extreme. It happened, then, that from some already free Christians who came from Barbary he bought that monkey, to whom he taught that, at a certain sign, climb on his shoulder and whisper, or it seemed, in his ear. Finished the sample, he proposed the skills of his monkey, telling the people that he guessed everything past and present, but that in what was to come there was no tomorrow. For the answer to each question he asked for 2 reals. And since perhaps he came to the houses of whom he knew the events of those who lived there, although they did not ask him anything for not paying him, he made the sign to the monkey, and then said that he had told him such and such a thing, that it came out of mold with what happened. Just as he entered the inn, he met Don Quixote and Sancho, by whose knowledge it was easy for him to admire Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, and all those who were there. This is what there is to say about Master Pedro and his monkey. And, returning to Don Quixote de la Mancha, I say that, after having left the inn, he determined to first see the banks of the Ebro River and all those surroundings, before entering the city of Zaragoza. On the 3rd day, climbing a hill, he heard a great noise of drums, trumpets and arquebuses. He saw at its foot, in his opinion, more than 200 men armed with different kinds of weapons. He got down from his seat and approached the squadron, so much so that he distinctly saw the flags, judged their colors and noticed the companies that they had on them. By this insignia he drew Don Quixote that those people must have been from the town of Braying. Finally, they met and learned how the run town went out to fight with another that ran more than fair and what was due to good neighborliness. Don Quixote was reaching them. Those of the squad picked him up in the middle, believing that it was one of his partiality. Don Quixote, raising his visor, with gentle spirit and restraint, reached the standard of the donkey, and there all the most important of the army stood around him. I, my gentleman, am a knight-errant, whose exercise is that of arms, and whose profession is to favor those in need of favor and assist the needy. 4 days I have known your misfortune and the cause that moves you to take up arms at every step, to take revenge on your enemies. According to the laws of dueling, that you are deceived into having yourself as outraged, because no individual can offend an entire people, if not by challenging him as a traitor as a whole, because he does not know in particular who committed the treason for which he challenges him. Since, then, this is so, that one alone cannot offend a kingdom, province, city, republic, or entire people, it is clear that there is no reason to go out to revenge the challenge of such an affront, because it is not, because, it would be good if those from the town of Lariloha, with whom it is called, were killed at every step, not the pot makers, eggplant makers, calves, soap makers, or those with other names and surnames. But taking them for childishness and for things that are more of a laugh and pastime than an affront, it seems that whoever takes them lacks all reasonable discourse, how much more, that taking unjust revenge, for there cannot be any justice that is, goes directly against the holy law that we profess, in which we are commanded to do good to our enemies and to love those who hate us, a commandment that, although it seems somewhat difficult to fulfill, it is only for those who have less of God than of the world, and more of flesh than of spirit, because Jesus Christ, God and true man, who never lied, nor could nor can lie, being our legislator, said that his yoke was easy and his burden was light, and thus, he would not have commanded us anything that would be impossible to fulfill. So, my lords, your graces are obliged by divine and human laws to calm down. Said Sancho at this time, my lord Don Quixote de la Mancha, who knows Latin and romance like a bachelor, and in everything he deals with and advises, he proceeds like a very good soldier, and has all the laws and ordinances of what is called duelling in his hands. The nail, and so, there is nothing else to do but let yourself be carried away by what he says, and on me if they make a mistake. And then, putting his hand to his nose, he began to bray so loudly that all the nearby valleys rumbled. But one of those who were next to him, believing that he was making fun of them, raised a stick that he had in his hand, and gave him such a blow with it that, without being able to do anything else, he knocked Sancho Panza to the ground. Don Quixote, who saw Sancho so badly prepared, attacked the one who had hit him, with his lance in hand, but there were so many who got in the way that it was not possible to avenge him, before, seeing that a cloud of stones was raining down on him, and that 1,000 pointed crossbows and no less quantity of arquebuses threatened him, he turned the reins to Rocinante, and as fast as he could gallop, he left between them. But those of the squad were content to see him flee, without shooting him. They put Sancho on his ass, barely regaining consciousness, and they let him go after his mistress. Those of the squad stayed there until nightfall, and, since their opponents had not gone out to battle, they returned to their town, rejoicing and happy. Chapter XXVIII. Of things that Benengeli says that whoever reads them will know them, if he reads them carefully. When the brave flees, the trickery is discovered, and it is prudent men to save themselves for a better occasion. This truth was verified in Don Quixote. He moved away as far as he thought was enough to be sure. Sancho followed him, across his donkey, as has been mentioned. You knew how to bray so badly, Sancho. And where did you find it good to name the noose in the house of the hanged man? Let's go upstairs and get away from here, and I'll silence my braying, but I won't stop saying that knights errant flee, and leave their good squires crushed like henna, or like Cybara, in the power of their enemies. He who retreats does not flee, answered Don Quixote, because you must know, Sancho, that courage that is not founded on the foundation of prudence is called recklessness, and the exploits of the reckless are attributed more to good fortune than to misfortune. To your mood. And so, I confess that I have withdrawn, but not fled. And little by little they went to ambush in a tree-lined avenue that resembled it up to 1/4 of a league from there. Every day I am discovering land of how little I can expect from the company that with your grace I have, because if this time he has allowed me to be beaten, another and 100 others we will return to the mantimientos of your and other girls, that if they have come out behind my back now, later they will come out in my eyes. I would do much better, I say again, to go back to my house, and to my wife, and my children, and sustain her and raise them with what God was pleased to give me, and not go after your grace on pathless paths and races that don't have them, drinking badly and eating worse. Speak, my son, everything that comes to your mind and to your mouth, that, in exchange for the fact that nothing hurts you, I will like the anger that your impertinence gives me. And if you want so much to go back to your house with your wife and children, God forbid that I prevent you, money you have mine, and see what you can and should earn each month, and pay yourselves. 2 ducats he earned each month, in addition to food. With your mercy I don't know what I can win. All the other time I have slept on the hard earth, under the open sky, subject to what the inclemencies of the sky say, sustaining myself with slices of cheese and crusts of bread, and drinking water, now from streams, now from fountains. In my opinion, with 2 reals more that your worship added each month, I would consider myself well paid. This is about the salary of my job, but, in terms of satisfying myself with the word and promise that your grace has given me to give me the government of an island, it would be fair to add another 6 reals, which would be 30 for all. It's very good, replied Don Quixote, and, according to the salary that you have indicated, 23 days ago we left our town, Count, Sancho, rat by quantity, and see what I owe you, and pay yourselves, as I have told you, from your hand. O body of me! That your grace is very wrong in this account, because in the matter of the promise of the insula it has to be counted from the day that your grace promised me until the present hour in which we are. Well, how long ago, Sancho, did I promise you? Don Quixote said. If I remember correctly, replied Sancho, it must have been more than 20 years, 3 days more or less. Don Quixote gave himself a big slap on the forehead, and he began to laugh very heartily, and said, well, I didn't go to Sierra Morena, not even in all the talk about our outings, but barely 2 months, and you say, Sancho, that 20 years ago I promised you the island. Now I say that you want the money you have from me to be consumed in your wages, and if this is so, and you like it, from here I give it to you, and good benefit to you, that, in exchange for seeing myself without such a bad squire, I will rejoice at staying poor and penniless. Return the reins, or the halter, to the dapple, and go back to your house, because a single step from here you will not go further with me. Anyway, as you have said other times, it is not honey, etc. You are an ass, and an ass you have to be, and an ass you have to stop when the course of your life runs out. My lord, I confess that to be completely an ass I don't need any more of the tail. If your grace wants to put it on me, I will consider it well put on, and I will serve you as a donkey all the days that remain of my life. Your mercy forgive me and be sorry for my youth, and notice that I know little, and that if I talk a lot, it comes more from illness than from malice, but whoever errs and amends himself entrusts himself to God. I would be amazed, Sancho, if you didn't mix some refrain in your colloquy. Now, I forgive you, as long as you make amends, and as long as you don't show yourself to be such a friend of your interest from now on, but try to widen your heart, and encourage yourself to wait for the fulfillment of my promises, which, although it takes time, it doesn't make it impossible. With this, they entered the Alameda. And when leaving the Don they continued their way looking for the banks of the famous Ebro. Chapter XXIX. From the famous adventure of the enchanted ship. 2 days after they left the Alameda, Don Quixote and Sancho arrived at the Ebro river. Going therefore in this way, a small boat without oars or other rigging came into view, which was tied on the shore to a trunk of a tree that was on the shore. You must know, Sancho, that this ship that is here, upright and without being able to do anything else to the contrary, is calling me and inviting me to get on it, and go on it to help some gentleman. And this is as true as it is now in the day, and before he goes too far, tie Dapple and Rocinante together, and to the hand of God, may he guide us, I will not fail to embark if barefoot friars ask me to. To your mercy, it seems to me that this ship is not one of the enchanted, but of some fishermen of this river. They're already tied up, replied Sancho. What are we to do now? Embark and cut the mooring with which this ship is tied. And, jumping into it, Sancho following him, he cut the rope, and the boat gradually moved away from the shore. In this, they discovered some large mills that were in the middle of the river, and as soon as Don Quixote had seen them, he said to Sancho in a loud voice, do you see? There, O friend, the city, castle or fortress is discovered where some oppressed knight must be, or some queen, infanta, or princess ill-fated, for whose help I am here brought. Don't you see that those are mills that are in the river, where the wheat is ground? Hush, Sancho, said Don Quixote, that, although they seem to be mills, they are not, and I have already told you that all things reverse and change their charms from their natural being. The millers of the mills, who saw that boat coming down the river, and that it was going to enter the river by the torrent of wheels, many of them came out quickly with long sticks to stop it, and, as they came out covered in flour, and covered their faces and the dresses of the dust of the flour, represented a bad sight. Devils of men! Where are you going? Do you come desperate? What do you want, drown and shatter on these wheels? Didn't I tell you, Sancho, said Don Quixote at this point, that we had arrived where I have to show how far the value of my arm reaches? Look what miscreants and troublemakers come out to meet me. And, standing up in the boat, with loud voices he began to threaten the millers, telling them, evil scoundrel and ill-advised, leave in his freedom and free will the person who in that your fortress or prison you have oppressed, high or low. Low, of whatever luck or quality it may be, and, saying this, he took up his sword and began to brandish it in the air against the millers, which, hearing and not understanding those nonsense, began with their sticks to stop the ship, which was already entering the torrent and channel of the wheels. Sancho got down on his knees, devoutly asking heaven to free him from such obvious danger, as he did, through the industry and alacrity of the millers, who, opposing the ship with their sticks, stopped him, but not in such a way as to stop disturbing the ship. Ship and find Don Quixote and Sancho across the water, but it came in handy for Don Quixote, who knew how to swim like a goose, although the weight of the weapons took him to the bottom twice, and if it weren't for the millers, who threw themselves into the water and pulled them both out by weight, Troy would have been there for both of them. Placed, then, on land, the fisherman who owned the boat, who had been torn to pieces by the wheels of the water mills, arrived at this moment, and, seeing him broken, they undertook to undress Sancho, and to ask Don Quixote to pay them, who, with great calm, as if nothing had happened to him, told the millers and fishermen that he would pay for the ship very willingly, on the condition that they give him freely and without caution to the person or persons who in that his castle they were oppressed. What people or what castle do you say, man without judgment? Enough. Don Quixote said to himself. And in this adventure two brave enchanters must have met, and the one hinders what the other tries, the one brought me the ship, and the other found me across. God help it, that this whole world is machines and traces, contrary to each other. I cannot any more. Friends, whoever you are, who are locked up in that prison, forgive me, that, due to my misfortune and yours, I cannot get you out of your trouble. For another gentleman this adventure must be kept and reserved. Saying this, he agreed with the fisherman, and paid 50 reals for the boat, which Sancho very reluctantly gave them. Considering them crazy, they left them and went to their mills, and the fishermen to their ranches. They returned to their beasts, and to being beasts, Don Quixote and Sancho, and this end had the adventure of the enchanted ship. Chapter XXX. Of what happened to Don Quixote with a beautiful huntress. As melancholy and in a bad mood came to their animals knight and squire. It happened, then, that another day, at sunset, and coming out of a forest, and coming close, he found out that they were arrogant hunters. And among them he saw a gallant lady on a white palfrey or jacani. In her left hand she carried a goshawk, a sign that made Don Quixote understand that she was some great lady, who must have been one of all those hunters, as was the truth, and so he said to Sancho, Run, son Sancho, and tell that lady with the palfrey and the goshawk that I, the Knight of the Lions, kiss the hands of her great beauty, and that if her greatness grants me leave, I will go to kiss them, and serve her as soon as my strength can and her highness will send me. Beautiful lady, that gentleman who appears there, called the Knight of the Lions, sends for me to say to your greatness, be served to give him permission so that, with his purpose and approval and consent, he may come to put his wish into action. Get up, friend, and tell your lord to come a lot at a good time to make use of me and the duke my husband, in a house of pleasure that we have here. Tell me, brother squire, this your lord, isn't he one of whom a story is printed called the ingenious Hidalgo Don Quixote de la Mancha? With great pleasure he returned to his mistress, to whom he related all that the great lady had told him. And with gentle boldness he went to kiss the duchess's hands, which, summoning the duke, her husband, told him, while Don Quixote arrived. At this, Don Quixote arrived, his visor raised, and, showing signs of dismounting, Sancho went to hold the stirrup for him, but he was so unlucky that, when he got down from the dapple, his foot caught on a rope from the pack saddle, in such a way that it was not possible to disentangle him, rather he was left hanging from it, with his mouth and breasts on the ground. Don Quixote suddenly unloaded the body and dragged behind him Rocinante's chair, which must have been badly strapped, and he and the chair fell to the ground, not without his shame and many curses that he mumbled to the unfortunate Sancho under his breath, who still had his foot on the corma. The duke ordered his hunters to go to the knight and the squire, who lifted Don Quixote battered from the fall, and, limping and as he could, he went to kneel before the two lords, but the duke did not consent to it in any way. Before, getting off his horse, he went to embrace Don Quixote, saying, I regret, Mr. Knight of the sad figure, that the first thing that your grace has done in my land has been as bad as it has been seen, but carelessness of squires are usually the cause of other worse events. But however I am, fallen, or risen, on foot or on horseback, I will always be at your service and that of my lady the Duchess. Don Quixote turned to the Duchess and said, Your greatness imagines that there was no knight-errant in the world who was a more talkative or more graceful squire than I have, and he will truly bring me out if some days your great Celcitude wishes to make use of me. To which the Duchess replied, that Sancho the Good is funny I highly esteem, because it is a sign that he is discreet, that graces and graces, Señor Don Quixote, as your grace well knows, do not rest on clumsy ingenuities. I say that the Lord Knight of the Lions come to a castle of mine which is near here. Chapter XXXI. That deals with many great things. The story tells, then, that before they arrived at the pleasure house or castle, the Duke went ahead and ordered all his servants the way they were to treat Don Quixote. Finally, the Duke came out to take her down, and as he entered a large courtyard, two beautiful maidens arrived and placed a great cloak of the finest scarlet on Don Quixote's shoulders. Welcome the cream of the errant knights. And that was the first day that of all in all he knew and believed to be a true knight-errant, and not fantastic. Sancho, abandoning the dapple, sewed himself with the Duchess and entered the castle. They reached the top and Don Quixote entered a room adorned with rich gold and brocade fabrics. 6 maidens disarmed him and served as pages, all of them trained and warned the Duke and Duchess of what they had to do, and how they had to treat Don Quixote, so that he imagined and saw that they treated him like a knight-errant. Don Quixote remained, after being disarmed, in his tight gregesque and in his chamois doublet, dry, tall, stretched out, with his jaws, which on the inside kissed one with the other, figure that, not taking into account the maidens who served him with concealed laughter, which was one of the precise orders that their masters had given them, they burst out laughing. No, no, Sancho my friend, run away from these inconveniences, because whoever stumbles into talkative and funny, at the first kick falls and turns into a miserable scoundrel. Curb your tongue, consider and ruminate on the words before they come out of your mouth, and realize that we have reached a place where, with the favor of God and the courage of my arm, we will come out third and fifth better in fame and wealth. Then 12 pages arrived with the maestre Sala, to take him to eat, since the gentlemen were already waiting for him. He invited the Duke to Don Quixote with the head of the table, and although he refused, the Duke's importunations were so great that he had to take it. Sancho said, "If your Mercedes give me permission, I'll tell you a story that happened in my town about the seat thing. A hidalgo from my town invited, very rich and important, because he came from Los Alamos de Medina del Campo, who married Dona Mencia de Quiñones, who was the daughter of Don Alonso de Marañón, a knight in the habit of Santiago, who drowned in La Herradura, for whom there was that brawl years ago in our place, which, as far as I understand, my lord Don Quixote was found there, from which Tomásilo el Treviso, the son of Balbastro the blacksmith, was wounded. I say, like this," said Sancho, "that, being, as I said, the two to sit at the table, the farmer insisted with the hidalgo that he take the head of the table, and the hidalgo also insisted that the farmer take it. Because in his house they had to do what he ordered, but the farmer, who presumed to be courteous and well-bred, never wanted to, until the hidalgo, pouting, putting both hands on his shoulders, forced him to sit down, saying, 'Sit down, Magigranzas, that wherever I sit will be yours.' Headboard. And this is the story, and I truly believe that it has not been brought here unintentionally." Don Quixote put on 1,000 colors, which over his brown speckled him and resembled him. The gentlemen concealed their laughter, because Don Quixote had not finished running, having understood Sancho's malice, and, in order to change the subject and prevent Sancho from continuing with other nonsense, the Duchess asked Don Quixote what news he had about the lady Dulcinea, and if he had sent her any gifts of giants or miscreants those days. Well, she couldn't leave him alone. Having won many, to which Don Quixote replied, "My lady, my misfortunes, although they had a beginning, will never have an end. Giants I have conquered, and troublemakers and scoundrels I have sent her, but where were they to find her, if she is enchanted and turned into the ugliest farmer you can imagine?" The ecclesiastic, who had heard of giants, troubles, and enchantments, realized that this must be Don Quixote de la Mancha, whose history the Duke regularly read, and he had reprimanded him many times, telling him that it was nonsense to read such nonsense, and, finding out to be true what he suspected, with great anger, speaking with the Duke, he told him, "Your Excellency, my lord, you have to give an account to our lord of what this good man is doing. This Don Quixote, or Don Tonto, or whatever his name is, I imagine that he must not be as foolish as your Excellency wants him to be, giving him opportunities to carry out his nonsense and emptiness." And, returning the conversation to Don Quixote, he said, "And you, soul of a pitcher, who has fitted you into the fame that you are a knight errant and that you defeat giants and arrest rogues? Go in good time, and in such a way you are told, return to your house, and raise your children, if you have them, and take care of your property, and stop wandering around the world, sucking wind and making everyone laugh. They know and do not know." Chapter XXXII. Of the answer that Don Quixote gave to his oppressor, with other serious and graceful events. So, rising to his feet, Don Quixote, trembling from head to foot as if in a panic, with a hasty and troubled tongue, said, "The place where I am, and the presence before whom I find myself, and the respect that I always had and have for the state, that your grace professes have and bind the hands of my just anger. Holy and well-intentioned reprehensions require other circumstances, and other points require, at least, having reprimanded me in public and so harshly has passed all the limits of good reprehension, since the former are better based on softness than on harshness, and it is not good that, without knowing the sin that is reprehended, to call the sinner, without further ado, foolish and foolish. If the gentleman, the magnificent, the generous, the highly born, considered me a fool, I would consider it an irreparable affront, but that the students, who never entered or stepped on the paths of chivalry, take me for a fool, I don't give a damn. I am a knight, and a knight I will die if it pleases the Almighty. Some go through the wide field of proud ambition, others, by that of servile and base flattery, others, by that of deceitful hypocrisy, and some, by that of true religion, but I, leaning on my star, walk the narrow path of cavalry errantry, for whose exercise I despise the hacienda, but do not honor it." "By chance," said the ecclesiastic, "are you, brother, that Sancho Panza they say, to whom your master has promised an island?" "Yes, I am," replied Sancho, "and I am the one who deserves it as well as anyone else. No, by the way, Sancho my friend, said the Duke at this point, for I, in the name of Señor Don Quixote, am sending you the government of one that I have of none, of no small quality. Kneel on your knees, Sancho, said Don Quixote, and kiss his excellency's feet for the favor he has done you. Sancho did so. When the ecclesiastic saw this, he got up from the table, sulking as well, saying, because of my habit, I'm about to say that he is as stupid, your excellency, as these sinners. See if they must not be crazy, because the sane canonize their madness. Your excellency stay with them, that, as long as they are at home, I will be at mine, and I will excuse myself from reproaching what I cannot remedy. The Duchess perished with laughter when she heard Sancho speak, and she, in her opinion, considered him more amusing and more crazy than her master, and there were many at that time who were of the same opinion. Finally, Don Quixote calmed down, and the meal was over, and, raising the tablecloths, 4 maidens arrived, one with a silver bowl, and the other with a silver ewer, and the other with 2 very white and delicious towels on her shoulders, and the fourth with her arms halfway uncovered, and in her white hands, which were undoubtedly white, a round pellet of Neapolitan soap. The one with the fountain arrived, and with gentle grace and ease she fitted the fountain under Don Quixote's beard, who, without speaking a word, admired such a ceremony, believing that it should be the custom of that land to wash one's beard instead of one's hands, and thus stretched out his as much as he could. The Duke and Duchess, who knew nothing of this, were waiting for the outcome of such an extraordinary lavatory. The barber maid, when she had him within an inch of suds, pretended that she had run out of water, and ordered the one with the ewer to fetch her, since Mr. Don Quixote would wait. He did so, and Don Quixote was left with the strangest figure and more to make laugh than he could imagine. Finally, the maid with the ewer came, and they finished Don Quixote's washing, and then the one who brought the towels cleaned and dried him very calmly. Sancho was attentive to the ceremonies of that lavatory, and he said among himself, "Good God! If it will also be customary in this land to wash the beards of squires as well as knights? What do you say to each other, Sancho?" The Duchess asked. "I say, madam," he answered, "that in the courts of other princes I have always heard it said that when they lift the tablecloths they give water to the hands, but not light to the beards, and that is why it is good to live long, to see a lot, although they also say that he who lives a long life has to go through a lot of bad, since going through a lavatory of these before is pleasure rather than work." "Don't be embarrassed, friend Sancho," said the Duchess, "I'll have my maids wash you, and even put you in laundry, if necessary." The Maestre Sala replied that Señor Sancho would be served in everything, and with this he went to eat, and took Sancho with him, the Dukes and Don Quixote staying at the table, talking about many different things, but all related to the exercise of arms and cavalry errantry. What is the use of me now delineating and describing point by point and part by part the beauty of the peerless Dulcinea, being a burden worthy of other shoulders than mine, a company in which the brushes of Paragio, of Timance, and Apelles, and Lysippus Burins, to paint and engrave it on tablets, marble, and bronze? "So it is," said the Duke, "and you have been dazzled by such a question. But, with all that, Mr. Don Quixote would give us great pleasure if he painted it for us." "Yes, by the way," responded Don Quixote, "if the misfortune that recently befell her had not erased her from my mind. She found her enchanted and turned from a princess into a farmer, from beautiful to ugly, from angel to devil, from odorous to pestiferous, and, finally, from Dulcinea del Toboso into a Sayago villain." "Who?" replied Don Quixote. "Who can it be but some evil charmer from the many envious ones who persecute me? This cursed race, born in the world to darken and annihilate the deeds of the good, and to illuminate and raise the deeds of the bad. Because to take away his lady from a knight-errant is to take away the eyes with which she looks, and the sun with which she shines, and the sustenance with which he supports himself. There is nothing more to say," said the Duchess, "but if, with all that, we have to give credence to the story that of Mr. Don Quixote a few days to this part has come to light in the world, with general applause of the people, from it is inferred, if I remember correctly, that your grace has never seen Mrs. Dulcinea, and that this lady is not in the world, but she is a fantastic lady, that your grace begot her and gave birth to her understanding, and painted her with all those graces and perfections that you wanted." "There is much to say about that," answered Don Quixote. "God knows if there's Dulcinea in the world or not, or if she's fantastic or not she's fantastic, and these are not of the things whose investigation has to be carried out. I say, Señor Don Quixote," said the Duchess, "that in everything your grace says she walks with a lead foot, and, as they say, with the probe in her hand, and that from now on I will believe and will make everyone in my house believe, and even my lord the Duke, if necessary, that there is Dulcinea in Toboso. But I can't help but form a scruple, and have some I don't know what grudge against Sancho Panza. The scruple is that the aforementioned story says that the Sancho Panza found this lady Dulcinea, when on behalf of your grace he brought her a epistle, packing a sack of wheat, and, by more signs, says that he was blonde, something that makes me doubt the highness of his lineage. My lady, your greatness will know that all or most of the things that happen to me are outside the ordinary terms of what happens to other knights errant, or are already directed by the malice of some envious enchanter. And so, seeing these charmers who cannot use their bad tricks with me, take revenge on the things I love most, and want to take my life mistreating that of Dulcinea, for whom I live, and so, I believe that, when my squire took my embassy to her, she was turned into a villain and engaged in such a low exercise as that of tilling wheat, but I have already said that that wheat was neither blonde nor wheat, but grains of oriental pearls. And, well, I am not delighted, nor can I be, according to good speech, she is the enchanted one, the offended one and the changed one, changed and reversed, and in her my enemies have taken revenge on me. On the other hand, I want your honors to understand that Sancho Panza is one of the most graceful squires who ever served as a knight-errant. He sometimes has such acute simplicities that the thought of whether he is simple or acute causes no little satisfaction. He has malice that condemns him as a miscreant, and carelessness that confirms him as a fool. He doubts everything and believes everything. Finally, I would not exchange him for another squire, even if they gave me a city in addition, and so, I am in doubt if it will be good to send him to the government of which your greatness has done him mercy, although I see in him a certain aptitude for governing, that by tiring his mind so much, he would get away with any government, like the king with his sales tax, and more, that already from many experiences we know that neither much skill nor many letters is necessary to be a governor. Since there are 100 out there who barely know how to read, and they govern like some bigwigs, the touch is that they have good intentions and want to get everything right, that they will never lack someone to advise them and direct them in what they have to do. The Duke, the Duchess, and Don Quixote had reached this point of their conversation, when they heard many voices and a great noise of people in the palace, and at the wrong time Sancho entered the room, all frightened, with a gopher as his bib, and behind him many young men. This gentleman doesn't want to let himself be washed, as is the custom, and as the Duke my lord washed it and the Lord loved it. Yes, I do, replied Sancho with great anger, but he would like it to be with cleaner towels, with lighter bleach and with hands that are not so dirty, that there is not so much difference between me and my master, that they wash him with the water of angels and me with the bleach of devils. I am clean of beards and have no need of such refreshments, and whoever gets to wash me or even touch a hair on my head, I say, my beard, speaking with due respect, I will give him such a punch that I leave his fist embedded in his helmets, that these such ceremonies and such seem more like jokes than entertaining guests. Hello, gentlemen. Your mercies leave the young man, and go back the way you came, or on the other hand if you please, because my squire is as clean as another. Take my advice and leave him, because neither he nor I know about teasing. Said the Duchess. Sancho Panza is right in everything he has said, and he will be right in everything he says. He is clean, and, as he says, he does not need to wash, but, in the end, you are bad and ill-born, and you can't stop, like the scoundrels that you are, from showing the resentment you have with the squires of the knights-errant. The mischievous ministers, and even the maestre Sala, who came with them, believed that the Duchess was truly speaking, and so they removed the sickle from Sancho's chest, and all of them, confused and almost thrown, went and left him. Get up, friend Sancho, for I will satisfy your courtesies by having the Duke my lord, as soon as he can, fulfill the mercy promised to you by the government. With this the talk ceased, and Don Quixote went to rest for his siesta, and the Duchess asked Sancho if he did not feel like sleeping very much, to come and spend the afternoon with her and her maids in a very cool room. The Duke gave new orders that Don Quixote be treated as a knight-errant, without leaving a point of the style as they say that the ancient knights were treated. Chapter XXXIII. Of the tasty talk that the Duchess and her maidens had with Sancho Panza, worthy of being read and noted. Sancho did not take that siesta, but, to keep his word, he came to eat to see the Duchess. Now that we are alone, Mr. Governor, please clear up certain doubts that I have, arising from the history of the great Don Quixote that is already in print, one of which doubts is that, since the good Sancho never saw Dulcinea, nor did he take Don Quixote's letter to her, because it remained in the memory book in Sierra Morena, how dared he pretend to answer, and that he found her harvesting wheat, being all mockery and lies. The first thing I say is that I consider my lord Don Quixote to be a complete madman. Well, since I have this in my head, I dare to make you believe what makes no sense, as was the response to the letter. And what will be 6 or 8 days, which is not yet in history, it is worth knowing, about the enchantment of my lady Dona Dulcinea, that I have given her to understand that she is enchanted, being no more true than the hills of Ubeda. From what the good Sancho has told me, a scruple is jumping in my soul and a certain whisper reaches my ears, which tells me, well, Don Quixote de la Mancha is crazy, weak and goofy, and Sancho Panza his squire he knows him, and, with all that, he serves him and follows him and sticks to his vain promises, without a doubt he must be crazier and more foolish than his master, and, this being so, as it is, it will be misreported to you, Lady Duchess, if you give the Sancho Panza the privilege to govern, because he who does not know how to govern himself, how will he know how to govern others? For God's sake, madam, if I were discreet, days ago I should have left my master. But this was my luck, and this my bad luck, I can't take it any more, I have to follow him, we are from the same place, I have eaten his bread, I love him well, he is grateful, he gave me his donkey, and, above all, I am faithful, and thus, it is impossible that any other event than that of the shovel and hoe can separate us. And if your arrogance does not want the promised government to be given to me, God did me less, and it could be that not giving it to me redounded to my conscience, that, silly Megara, I understand that saying because of his misfortune the ant grew wings. And when leaving this world and going inland, the prince follows such a narrow path as the laborer, and the body of the pope occupies no more feet of land than that of the sacristan, although one is taller than the other, that when we enter the hole we all adjust and shrink, or they make us adjust and shrink, whether it weighs us down and good night. And I return to say that if your lordship does not want to take the island for a fool, I will know how not to take anything for discreet, and I have heard that behind the cross is the devil, and that all that glitters is not gold. Good Sancho already knows that what a gentleman once promises he tries to fulfill, even if it costs him his life. The Duke, my lord and husband, although he is not one of the errant, does not stop being a knight for that, and thus, he will keep the word of the promised island, despite the envy and malice of the world. What I charge you is to watch how he governs his vassals, noting that they are all loyal and well-born. That of governing them well there is no reason to entrust it to me, because I am charitable of my own and I have compassion for the poor, I say it because the good ones will have with me hand and concavity, and the bad ones neither foot nor entrance. But, going back to the conversation that we recently dealt with about the enchantment of Mrs. Dulcinea, believe me, Sancho, that the bouncy villain was and is Dulcinea del Toboso, who is enchanted like her mother who gave birth to her, and when we least think about it, we will have to see it in her own figure, and then Sancho will come out of the deception in which she lives. It may well be all that, and now I want to believe what my master says about what he saw in the cave of Montesinos, where he says that he saw Mrs. Dulcinea del Toboso in the same dress and habit that I said I had seen her when I charmed her for my own pleasure, and everything must have been the other way around, like your grace, my lady, he says. According to what I heard my lord say, that a good name is better than great riches, fit me that government and you will see wonders, that he who has been a good squire will be a good governor. Well, speaking in his way, under a bad layer there is usually a good drinker. Truly, madam, answered Sancho, in my life I have drunk from malice, I could well be thirsty, because I'm not at all hypocritical, I drink when I feel like it, and when I don't feel like it, and when they give it to me, so as not to appear picky or spoiled, that to a toast from a friend, what heart must there be so made of marble that reason does not act? But, although I put them on, I don't dirty them. And for now, let Sancho go to rest, for later we'll talk longer and give order as soon as it fits, as he says, that government. She went to inform the Duke of what had happened to him, and between the two of them they outlined and ordered to make a mockery of Don Quixote that would be famous and would go well with the chivalric style. Chapter 30. What an account of the news that was had of how the unparalleled Dulcinea del Toboso had to be disenchanted, which is one of the most famous adventures of this book. Great was the pleasure that the Duke and Duchess received from the conversation of Don Quixote and that of Sancho Panza, and, confirming their intention to play tricks on them that would give glimpses and appearances of adventure, they took the motive that Don Quixote had already told them about the cave of Montesinos. And so, having given orders to his servants about everything they had to do, 6 days later they took him out hunting, with as much apparatus of huntsmen and hunters as a crowned king could wear. When the long-awaited day arrived, Don Quixote armed himself, Sancho dressed, and, on top of his grey, who did not want to leave him even though they gave him a horse, he joined a troop of huntsmen. Finally, they arrived at a forest that was between two very high mountains, where, having taken over the stalls, paranzas, and paths, and dividing the people into different stalls, the hunt began with a great uproar, shouts, and shouts. The Duchess alighted, and, with a sharp spear in her hands, she placed herself at a post where she knew some boars used to come. Finally, the tusked boar was pierced by the blades of many spears that were placed before it. In this, they crossed the mighty boar on a mule, and, covering him with bushes of rosemary and with branches of myrtle, they carried him. If this hunt was for hares or little birds, my coat would surely be seen at this extreme. I don't know what pleasure it is to wait for an animal that, if it hits you with a fang, can take your life, because it consists of killing an animal that has not committed any crime. With these and other entertaining reasonings, they left the store to the forest, and in requiring some paranzas, and soon, the day passed and the night came. And, just as it began to get dark, a little after twilight, suddenly it seemed that the whole forest on all four sides was on fire, and then they heard here and there, infinite bugles and other instruments of war, like many cavalry troops passing through the forest. The Duke was amazed, the Duchess was suspended, Don Quixote was amazed, Sancho Panza trembled, and, finally, even those who knew the cause were frightened. With fear they fell silent, and a postilion who dressed as a devil passed them by, sounding in the voice of a bugle a hollow and disproportionate horn, which a hoarse and frightful sound fired. "Hello, courier brother," said the Duke, "who are you, where are you going, and what kind of warlike people do you seem to be passing through this forest?" To which the courier replied in a horrific and carefree voice, "I am the devil, I am going to look for Don Quixote de la Mancha. The people who come here are 6 troops of enchanters, who on a triumphant chariot bring the incomparable Dulcinea del Toboso. Enchanted, she comes with the gallant Frenchman Montesinos, to order Don Quixote on how such a lady is to be disenchanted. To you, the Knight of the Lions, may I see you between their claws, the unfortunate but brave knight Montesinos sends me, ordering me to tell you on his behalf to wait for him in the same place that he meets you, because brings with him the one they call Dulcinea del Toboso, with orders to give you what is necessary to disenchant her." In this, the night closed more, and many lights began to run through the forest. Finally, the bugles, the horns, the bugles, the trumpets, the drums, the artillery, the arquebuses, and, above all, the fearful noise of the chariots, all together formed a sound so confused and so horrendous, that it was necessary for Don Quixote to make use of all his heart to suffer him. Just as a cart with screeching wheels was already arriving at that post. "I am the wise Lergandio." And the car passed ahead, without speaking another word. "I am the wise Alcaif, the great friend of Urganda the unknown." And he went ahead. "I am Archelaus the enchanter, mortal enemy of Amadis de Gaula and all his relatives." And he went ahead. A little off course these 3 chariots halted, and the annoying noise of their wheels ceased, and then another sound was heard, not a noise, but a sound of soft concerted music formed. Chapter XXXV. Where the news that Don Quixote had of Dulcinea's disenchantment is continued, with other admirable events. To the rhythm of the pleasant music they saw that a chariot of what they call triumphal was coming towards them pulled by 6 brown mules, covered, however, in white canvas, and on each one came a disciplinant of light, also dressed in white, with an axe burning wax candle in hand. And on a raised throne sat a nymph, clad in 1,000 veils of silver cloth. To the point that the cart came to be face to face with the dukes and Don Quixote, the music stopped. And, removing the veil from her face, she patently discovered to be the very figure of death, emaciated and ugly. "I am Merlin, the one that the stories say I had the devil for my father, authorized lie of the times, prince of magic and monarch," came the sorrowful voice of the beautiful and peerless Dulcinea del Toboso. She knew her enchantment and her disgrace, and her transformation from a gentle lady to a rustic villager. "Condole me. I come to give the remedy that suits pain size, bad size. It is necessary that Sancho, your squire, give himself 3,000 lashes and 300 on both of his valiant buttocks, uncovered in the air, and in such a way that they sting him, make him bitter, and annoy him. And in this all those who have been the authors of his misfortune are resolved, and to this is my coming, my lords. Vote for such," said Sancho at this moment. "I don't say 3,000 lashes, but that way I'll give myself 3, like 3 stab wounds. Use the devil for a way to disenchant. I don't know what my poses have to do with charms." "I'll take you," said Don Quixote, "villainous villain, fed up with garlic, and tie you to a tree, naked as your mother gave birth to you, and I do not say 3,300, but 6,600 lashes I will give you, so well glued that they do not fall to 3,300 tugs. It doesn't have to be like that, because the lashes that good Sancho has to receive have to be by his will, and not by force, and in the time that he wants, that he is not given a designated term." "Neither someone else's, nor my own, nor heavy, nor out of regret," replied Sancho, "no hand should touch me. Did I, perchance, give birth to Mrs. Dulcinea del Toboso, so that my souls pay for what her eyes sinned?" Hardly had Sancho finished saying this, when, rising to her feet, the silvery nymph who came along with Merlin's spirit, removing the subtle veil from her face, discovered him so that to all he seemed more than too beautiful. He said, "O ill-fated squire! Soul of a pitcher, heart of a cork oak, with pebbly and stoned entrails! If they commanded you, face-skinning thief, to throw yourself from a high tower to the ground, if you were persuaded to kill your wife and children with some truculent and sharp cutlass, it would not be a wonder that you should be finicky and elusive, but pay attention to 3,300 lashes, that there is no child of the doctrine, no matter how vile, that does not take them every month. Set free the smoothness of my flesh, the meekness of my condition and the beauty of my face, and if for me you do not want to soften or reduce yourself to some reasonable term, do it for that poor gentleman that you have by your side, for your love." "I mean, ma'am," answered Sancho, "what I have said, whipping, abernuncio. I am now bursting with grief at seeing my green tunic torn, and they come to ask me to whip me of my will. she being as oblivious to it as to turning me into a cacique. Well, really, friend Sancho, said the Duke, if you don't soften more than a ripe fig, you won't have to take control of the government. It would be good if I sent my islanders a cruel governor, with flinty entrails, who does not bend to the tears of the afflicted maidens, nor to the prayers of discreet, imperious, and ancient enchanters and sages. But, well, everyone tells me, although I don't see it, I say that I am happy to give myself the 3,300 lashes, with the condition that I have to give them each and every time I want, without being charged in days or in time. It must also be a condition that I will not be forced to draw blood with the discipline, and that if some lashes are of a rage, they must be taken into account. Coming to the full number, then Mrs. Dulcinea will suddenly be disenchanted, and will come looking for, as if grateful, the good Sancho. Come, then, to the hand of God. Said Sancho. I consent to my misfortune, I say that I accept penance with the conditions indicated. Hardly had Sancho said these last words when the music of the chirimia sounded again and countless arquebuses were fired again, and Don Quixote hung himself around Sancho's neck, giving him 1,000 kisses on his forehead and cheeks. Chapter 30. Where the strange and never imagined adventure of the owner Dolorida, alias Countess Trifaldi, is told, with a letter that Sancho Panza wrote to his wife Teresa Panza. The Duke had a steward of very burlesque and carefree ingenuity, who made the figure of Merlin and accommodated all the apparatus of the past adventure, composed the verses and had a page to Dulcinea. Finally, with the intervention of his lords, he ordered another of the most graceful and strange artifice that can be imagined. The Duchess asked Sancho another day if she had begun the task of penance that she had to do for Dulcinea's disenchantment. She said yes, and that night she had spanked herself 5 times with her hand. That, replied the Duchess, is more like slapping than whipping. It will be necessary for the good Sancho to do some discipline of thistles, or of those of cannelloni, that they let themselves be felt, because the letter with blood enters, and the freedom of such a great lady as Dulcinea should not be given so cheaply for so little price. Give me, your honor, some suitable discipline or branch, and I'll take care of it as long as it doesn't hurt me too much. I will give you tomorrow a discipline that suits you very well and accommodates the tenderness of your flesh. Know your highness, my lady of my soul, that I have written a letter to my wife Teresa Panza, giving her an account of everything that has happened to me after I left her. Here I have it in her bosom, that all she needs is to put her overwriting on it. I would like your discretion to read it, because it seems to me that it conforms to the governor, I mean, to the way governors should write. She saw that it said this way, letter from Sancho Panza to Teresa Panza, his wife. If they gave me a good whipping, I'd go well, gentlemen, if I have a good government, it costs me good whipping. You are a governor's wife, see if no one will gnaw your zancajos. We have been in the cave of Montesinos, and the wise Merlin has taken hold of me to the disenchantment of Dulcinea del Toboso, who is called Aldanza Lorenzo over there, with 3,300 lashes, -5, which I have to give myself. I will be disenchanted like the mother who gave birth to her. In a few days I will go to the government, where I am going with a great desire to make money. Your husband the governor, Sancho Panza. In 2 things the good governor is a little misguided. 1, in saying or implying that this government has been given to him for the whips that he has to give himself. The other is that he shows himself very greedy in it, and not I would like oregano to be, because greed breaks the sack, and the greedy governor makes unruly justice. And if it seems to you that such a letter is not going as it should, all you have to do is tear it up and make a new one, and it could be that it would be worse if they leave it to me. No, no, replied the Duchess, this one is fine, and I want the Duke to see it. With this they went to a garden, where they were to eat that day. The Duchess showed Sancho's letter to the Duke, with which she received great satisfaction. At the wrong time, the sad sound of a pifero and that of a hoarse and intemperate drum were heard. All showed to stir with the confused, martial and sad harmony. They saw 2 men dressed in mourning enter the garden ahead. They came playing 2 large drums, also covered in black. At his side came the pifero, black and pismiento like the others. The 3 were followed by a character with a gigantic body, breast-fed, not that dressed. His face was covered with a transparent black veil, through which a very long beard appeared. And, fixing his eyes on the Duke, he said, Most high and powerful lord, they call me Trifaldin the White-Bearded, I am a squire of Countess Trifaldi. And first he wants to know if the brave and never defeated knight Don Quixote de la Mancha is in this castle of yours, in search of whom he comes on foot and without breakfast from the kingdom of Candia to the state of yours. You may very well, stupendous squire, tell him to come in, and here is the brave knight Don Quixote de la Mancha, from whose generous condition all protection and all help can be safely promised. Come, this owner, and ask for what you want, and I will deliver her medicine to you with the strength of my arm and the intrepid resolution of my courageous spirit. Chapter XXXVII. Where the famous adventure of the sorrowful owner continues. I am well that your greatness come out to receive it, but as for the owner, I am of the opinion that they do not move a step. We will see the figure of the countess, and by it we will test the courtesy that is due her. In this, the drums and the pifero entered, like the first time. Chapter 38. Where is told the one that gave of the misfortune of her the owner dolorita. Behind the sad musicians they began to enter through the garden forward up to a number of 12 duennas, divided into 2 rows, all dressed as broad nuns. Behind them came the Countess Trifaldi, who was led by the hand by the Squire Trifaldin de la Blanca Barba. The 12 duennas stopped and made a street, through which La Dolorita advanced, without leaving Trifaldin by the hand, seeing which the Duke, the Duchess, and Don Quixote advanced 12 steps to receive her. Your grandees are served by not doing so much courtesy to the servant of his, I say, this is his maid, because, as I am in pain, I will not be able to respond to what I owe. If your troubles, anguished lady, can be promised some hope of remedy for some courage or strength of some knight errant, here are mine. I am Don Quixote de la Mancha, plainly and bluntly, tell your evils, which ears listen to you that they will know, if not remedy them, hurt them. Before these feet and legs I throw myself, O undefeated knight, for being the ones that are bases and columns of the cavalry errant. O you, the most loyal squire who never served as a knight errant in the present or in the past centuries, longer in goodness than the beard of Trifaldin, my companion, who is present. I will ask my master, who I know he loves me well, and more now than he needs me for a certain business, to favor and help your grace in everything he can. Your grace unpack your trouble and tell us about it, and let us do it, we'll all understand each other. La Trifaldi, who, sitting down again, said, from the famous kingdom of Cantea, which falls between the great Trapobana and the South Sea, Queen Dona Megancia, widow of King Archipila, her lord and husband, was mistress of whose marriage had and procreated the Infanta Antonomasia, heiress of the kingdom, which said Infanta Antonomasia was raised and grew up under my tutelage and doctrine, as I am the oldest and the most main owner of her mother. It happened, then, that, as days went by, the girl Antonomasia reached the age of 14, with such great perfection of beauty. An infinite number of princes fell in love with this beauty, both natural and foreign, among whom dared to raise their thoughts to heaven of such beauty a particular gentleman who was at court, who played a guitar that made her speak, and more than he was a poet and a great dancer. But all his gentleness and grace and all his graces and skills would be little or no part in yielding my child's strength, if the face-skinning thief did not use the remedy of yielding to me first. First, the scoundrel and heartless vagrant wanted to win my will and bribe my taste, so that I, a bad warden, would give him the keys to the fortress I guarded. In short, he flattered my understanding and gave me the will with I don't know what you said and jumps that he gave me, but what made me prostrate the most and hit the ground with me were some couplets that I heard him sing one night from a fence that fell into an alley where he was. Since then, seeing the evil in which I fell for these and other similar verses, I have considered that poets should be banished from the good and concerted republics. There was only one damage in this business, which was inequality, because Don Clavio was a private gentleman, and the Infanta Antonomasia was heir, as I have already said, to the kingdom. And it came about that, before the bad message came to light, Don Clavio asked Antonomasia before the vicar for his wife, in faith of a certificate that if she was his wife, the Infanta had made him, noted by my ingenuity, with such strength, that Samsons could not break it. The proceedings were carried out, the vicar saw the certificate, the said vicar took the confession from her wife, confessed flatly, had it deposited in the house of a very honest court bailiff. Chapter 36. Where the Trifaldi continues its wonderful and memorable history. In short, after many demands and responses, as the Infanta was always in her 13th, without deviating or changing from the first statement, the vicar ruled in favor of Don Clavio, and handed her over to him by his legitimate wife, of what received so much anger the Queen Dona Mines, mother of the Infanta Antonomasia, that in 3 days we buried her. Dead, then, the Queen, and not fainted, we buried her, placed on a wooden horse, the giant Malambruno, Cormanian cousin of Mainz, appeared on top of the Queen's tomb, who along with being cruel was charming, who with his arts, in revenge for the death of his Cormanian, and as punishment Don Clavio's audacity, and out of spite for Antonomasia's excess, left them enchanted over the same grave, her, turned into a bronze Gemia, and him, into a frightful crocodile of an unknown metal, and between the two there is a padrone, also made of metal, and on it are written in the Syriac language some letters that, having been declared in the Candeiesca, and now in the Castilian, enclose this sentence: these two daring lovers will not take their first form until the brave Manchego come with me to the hands in a singular battle, that for only its great value the fates keep this never-seen adventure. Finally, after having exaggerated our guilt and criticized the conditions of the owners, their bad tricks and worst rates, and charging everyone with the blame that I alone had, he said that he did not want to punish us with capital punishment, but with other lengthy punishments, which give us a civil and continuous death, and, at that very moment and point that he finished saying this, we all felt that the pores of our faces were opening, and that all over it they pricked us as if with the points of needles. Then we go with our hands to the faces, and let's meet in the way that you will now see. And then La Dolorida and the other duennas raised the masks with which they came, and discovered the faces, all covered in beards, some blonde, some black, some white, and some gaunt. This is the way that malicious Mas Malumbrano punished us. I say, then, where can a lady with a beard go? What father or what mother will she hurt her? Who will give her help? And, saying this, she gave signs of fainting. Chapter XL. Of things that concern and touch this adventure and this memorable story. Just as Sancho saw La Dolorida fainting, he said, by the faith of a good man, I swear, and by the century of all my past the Panzas, which I have never heard or seen, nor has my master told me, nor in his thought has fit, such an adventure as this. Did you find no other kind of punishment to give these sinners than to kill them? I'll bet they don't have the property to pay whoever raps them. This is the truth, sir, replied one of the 12, that we don't have a farm to clean up, and if by Mr. Don Quixote we are not remedied, with beards they will take us to the grave. I would peel mine, said Don Quixote, in the land of the Moors, if I didn't remedy yours. At this point, Trifaldi returned from her fainting spell and said, thus, once again I beg you, illustrious errant and indomitable lord, your gracious promise becomes a work. It won't be left for me, responded Don Quixote. Look, lady, what do I have to do, for the spirit is very ready to serve you. It is also to be known that Malumbrano told me that when luck gave me the knight our liberator, that he would send him a far better mount and with less malice than those that are returning. And how many fit on that horse? Sancho asked. La Dolorida replied, 2 people, one in the saddle and the other on the haunches, and, for the most part, these 2 such persons are knight and squire. I'd like to see it, replied Sancho, but to think that I have to get on it, neither on the saddle nor on the haunches, is asking for pears from the elm tree. Now, gentlemen, I say again that my lord can go alone, and good luck to him, that I will remain here, in the company of the Duchess my lady, and it may be that when I return I will find the cause of the lady Dulcinea improved in 3rd and 5th, because I think, in her idle and unoccupied moments, to give myself a series of lashes that don't cover her hair. Now then, said Don Quixote, Sancho will do as I command him. Oh! Said La Dolorida at this time, with benign eyes look at your greatness, brave knight. Trifaldi said this with so much feeling, that it brought tears to the eyes of all the bystanders, and even brought tears to Sancho's, and he proposed in her heart to accompany her mistress to the last parts of the world. Chapter XLI. From the coming of Clavelina, with the end of this long adventure. In this night came, and with it the determined point in which the famous Clavelina horse came. But you see here when at the wrong time 4 savages entered the garden, all dressed in green ivy, carrying on their shoulders a large wooden horse. But, so that the highness and sublimity of the road does not cause them to become vaguado, they must cover their eyes until the horse whinnies, which will be a sign that they have finished their journey. Valiant knight, Malumbrano's promises have been true, the horse is at home, our beards are growing, and each one of us and with each hair of ours we beg you to snuff us and thrash us, because it's nothing more than that you get on it with your squire and give a happy start to your new journey. That's what I'll do, Countess Trifaldi, very willingly and in a better mood. I won't do that, said Sancho, neither in bad nor in good spirits, in any way. And what will my insulanos say when they learn that their governor is wandering the winds? Sancho my friend, the island that I have promised you is not mobile or fugitive, her roots are so deep, lying in the abysses of the earth, that they will not uproot or move her from where she is with 3 jerks. What I want to take for this government is that you go with your lord Don Quixote to culminate and end this memorable adventure. No more, sir, said Sancho, I am a poor squire and cannot carry so many courtesies on my back. Come up my master, cover my eyes and commend me to God. But come here, Sancho, with the permission of these gentlemen, I want to speak 2 separate words to you. And, separating Sancho between some trees in the garden and taking hold of both his hands, he said to him, you see, brother Sancho, the long journey that awaits us, and God knows when we will return from it, nor the comfort and space that the passengers will give us. Business, so, I would like you to retire to your room now, as if you were going to look for something necessary for the road, and, in a flash, give yourself, at a good cost of the 3,300 lashes to which you are obliged, even 500, that dice you will have them, that to start things is to have them half finished. My God! Truly, your grace is not right. We are now going to shave off these duennas, and on my return I promise your worship, like who I am, to hurry myself out of my obligation, that your worship be content, and I will say no more. Well, with that promise, good Sancho, I am comforted, and I think you will keep it, because, in effect, although silly, you are a true man. And with this they went up again in Clavelina. Go up your mercy and cover yourself first, because if I have to go to the haunches, of course the one in the chair goes up first. In a bad mood and little by little Sancho managed to get on, and, adjusting himself as best he could on his haunches, he found them somewhat hard and not at all soft. Cover up, you disheartened animal, and don't let your fear come out in your mouth, at least in my presence. They covered themselves, and, sensing that Don Quixote was as he should be, he felt for the peg, and as soon as he had put his fingers on it, when all the duennas and all who were present raised their voices, saying, God guide you, brave knight. God be with you, fearless squire. Now you're going through those airs, breaking them with more speed than an arrow. You are already beginning to suspend and admire how many from the earth are watching you. Lord, how do these say that we are going so high, if their voices reach here, and they only seem to be here talking next to us? Don't worry about that, Sancho, since these things and these poultry are outside the ordinary courses, from 1,000 leagues you will see and hear what you want. That's the truth, answered Sancho, that on this side I get such a strong wind, that it seems that with 1,000 bellows they are blowing me. And so it was, that some great bellows were making him air, so well traced was such an adventure by the Duke and Duchess and her butler, that he did not lack a requirement that he stop making it perfect. In this, with light toes to turn on and off, from a distance, hanging from a cane, they warmed their faces. Sancho, who felt the heat, said, I'll be killed if we're not already at the place of the fire, or very close, because a large part of my beard has been singed. And, although it seems to us that we have not left the garden for half an hour, believe me that we must have traveled a long way. All these talks of the two brave men were heard by the Duke and Duchess and those in the garden, from which they received extraordinary satisfaction, and, wanting to finish off the strange and well-constructed adventure, they set fire to Clavelino's tail with some tow, and immediately, because the horse was full of thundering rockets, he flew through the air, with a strange noise, and hit Don Quixote and Sancho Panza on the ground, half singed. During this time, the entire bearded squadron of the duennas and Trifaldi and everything had already disappeared from the garden, and those in the garden remained as if they had fainted, stretched out on the ground. Don Quixote and Sancho got up battered, and, looking everywhere, were astonished to find themselves in the same garden from which they had started and to see so many people stretched out on the ground. On one side of the garden they saw a large lance stuck in the ground and hanging from it, and from two green silk cords a plain white parchment, on which, in large gold letters, was written the following: The illustrious knight Don Quixote of La Mancha perished, and the adventure of the Countess Trifaldi, by another name called the Sorrowful Duenna, and company ended, just by trying it. Malambruno considers himself happy and satisfied to all his will, and the beards of the owners are now smooth and trim, and the kings Don Clavio and Antonomasia in his pristine state. And, when the escuderal Vapilo is fulfilled, the white dove will be free from the pestiferous gerfalcons that persecute her, and in the arms of her beloved lullaby, that it is thus ordained by the wise Merlin, proto-enchanter of enchanters. He went to where the Duke and Duchess had not yet come to, and, taking the Duke by the hand, he said, Well, good sir, good cheer, that everything is nothing. The adventure is now over with no damage bars. The Duke read the poster with his eyes half closed, and then, with open arms, he went to embrace Don Quixote, telling him that he was the best knight that had ever been seen in any century. Sancho was looking around La Dolorita, to see what face she had without her beards, and if she was as beautiful without them as her gallant disposition promised, but they told him that just as Clavelino came down burning through the air and hit the ground, the whole squadron of the owners, with the Trifaldi, had disappeared, and that they were already bald and without cannons. She asked the Duchess to Sancho how she had fared on that long journey. To which Sancho replied, I, madam, felt that we were going, as my master told me, flying through the region of fire, and I wanted to uncover my eyes a little, but my master, whom I asked permission to uncover, did not consent. But I, who have I don't know what bits of curiosity and of wanting to know what gets in the way and prevents me, beautifully and without anyone seeing it, by my nose I moved away as much as the handkerchief that covered my eyes, and there I looked towards the earth, and it seemed to me that all of it was not bigger than a grain of mustard, and the men who walked on it, little bigger than hazelnuts, because it was seen how high we had to go then. In short, this was the end of the adventure of the Duenna Dolorita, who made the Dukes laugh, not only at that time, but throughout her life. Don Quixote whispered to Sancho, Sancho, well, you want us to believe what you've seen in the sky, I want you to believe what I saw in the cave of Montesinos, and I will not tell you more. Chapter XLII. Of the advice that Don Quixote gave to Sancho Panza before he went to govern the island, with other well-considered things. With the happy and funny event of the adventure of the Sorrowful, the Dukes were so happy, that they decided to go ahead with the jokes. On another day, which was the one that followed Clavelino's flight, the Duke told Sancho to dress up and prepare to become governor, since his islanders were already waiting for him like the rain in May. I give you what I can give, which is a full-fledged island, round and well-proportioned, and extremely fertile and abundant, where if you know how to give yourselves, you can with the riches of the earth earn those of heaven. Come on that island, I'll fight to be such a governor that, despite being scoundrels, I'll go to heaven, and this is not because I am greedy to get out of my hair or rise up, but because of the desire I have to prove what being a governor tastes like. If you try it once, Sancho, said the Duke, you will eat your hands after the government, for it is a very sweet thing to command and be obeyed. I hope that you will be such a governor as your judgment promises, and keep this here and note that tomorrow on that same day you will go to the government of the island, and this afternoon they will accommodate you with the appropriate suit that you have to wear and all the things necessary for your departure. Dress me, said Sancho, as you wish, for whatever way I am dressed I will be Sancho Panza. That's true, said the Duke, but the suits have to accommodate the office or dignity that is professed, that it would not be good for a little lawyer to dress like a soldier, nor a soldier like a priest. Just then Don Quixote arrived, and, knowing what was happening and how quickly Sancho was going to leave for his government, with the Duke's permission he took him by the hand and went with him to his room, with the intention of advising him on how to get on. There had to be in his trade. Infinite thanks I give to heaven, Sancho my friend, that, before and first that I have found some good fortune, it has come out to you to receive and find good fortune. Others bribe, importunate, request, get up early, beg, insist, and do not achieve what they want, and another arrives, and without knowing how or how not, he finds himself with the position and office that many others claimed, and here it enters and fits well to say that there is good and bad fortune in pretensions. I say all this, O Sancho, so that you do not attribute the favor received to your merits, but rather give thanks to heaven, which gently arranges things, and then you will give them to the greatness that the profession of knight-errantry contains. First of all, O son, you have to fear God, because in fearing him is wisdom, and being wise you will not be able to err in anything. The second thing, you have to put your eyes on who you are, trying to know yourself, which is the most difficult knowledge that can be imagined. From knowing you will come not to swell you up like the frog that wanted to be equal to the ox, that if you do this, the consideration of having kept pigs on your land will become ugly feet of the will of your madness. Make a show, Sancho, of the humility of your lineage, and don't be contemptuous of saying that you come from farmers, because, seeing that you don't come, no one will start to come, and prize yourself more for being a humble virtuous man than a proud sinner. Look, Sancho, if you take virtue as your means, and pride yourself on doing virtuous deeds, there is no reason to be envious of those who have them as princes and lords, because blood is inherited and virtue is acquired, and virtue it is worth by itself what blood is not worth. That if one of your relatives comes to see you when you are in your island, do not reject or insult him, before you have to welcome, entertain and give, that with this you will satisfy heaven. If you bring your wife with you, because it's not good for those who attend governments for a long time to be without their own, teach her, instruct her and wean her from her natural rudeness, because everything that a discreet governor usually acquires tends to lose and spill a rustic and silly woman. Never be guided by the law of lace, which usually has a lot of room with the ignorant who boast of acute. May the tears of the poor find in you more compassion, but not more justice, than the information of the rich. Try to discover the truth through the promises and gifts of the rich, as through the sobs and importunities of the poor. When equity could and should take place, do not charge the criminal with all the rigor of the law, for the fame of the rigorous judge is not better than that of the compassionate one. If you bend the rod of justice, not with the weight of the gift, but with the weight of mercy. When it happens to you to judge some lawsuit of some of your enemy, turn your mind away from your insult and put it on the truth of the case. If some beautiful woman comes to ask you for justice, remove your eyes from her tears and your ears from her moans, and consider the substance of what she asks as space, if you do not want your reason to be drowned in her tears and your kindness in her sighs. To whom you have to punish with deeds, do not treat badly with words, because the pain of torture is enough for the unfortunate, without the addition of bad reasons. More shines and reigns in our view that of mercy than that of justice. If you follow these precepts and these rules, Sancho, your days will be long, your fame will be eternal, your prizes abundant, your happiness unspeakable, you will marry your children as you wish, they and your grandchildren will have titles, you will live in peace and with the pleasure of the people, and in the last steps of life, death will overtake you, in soft and mature old age, and the tender and delicate hands of your Third Natizulos will close your eyes.